This is the new 2025 Mercedes-Benz G580 with EQ technology. Yes, insanely, that is its official name, the G580 with EQ technology. You know it as the electric G-Class, finally a fully electric version of the iconic G-Wagen SUV. It has 580 horsepower, it starts around $170,000, and today I'm going to review it and show you all of its quirks and features. Today's video is sponsored by Cars and Bids, which is my online car auction website for modern enthusiast cars. So far, Cars and Bids has sold almost $500 million worth of cars. All sorts of special and cool stuff like this, and this, and this, and this. If you're looking to sell your enthusiast car, reach a vast audience at carsandbids.com. All right, time for the quirks and features of the G580 with EQ technology. And let's start off with the quirkiest feature. Yes, it can tank turn. What does that mean? Just take a look. And if you're curious, here's what it looks like from the inside. So how does that work? Well, the electric G-Wagen has 4 electric motors, one at each wheel, and they can be configured to send the car in opposite directions. One can go forward, one can go backward. The result is a full 360-degree turn, basically around itself without moving. It's totally insane to watch. The drawback is, as great of a party trick as a tank turn, they call it a G-turn, really is, it's actually pretty hard to get it to happen in this vehicle. A lot of steps you got to follow before you can start spinning in circles. So let's go through it. First thing, you got to go into rock mode, and you can't just go into rock mode by flipping this switch in the center console. You go over to rock, and then you have to doubly confirm that yes, you do actually want rock mode, which they warn you is only to be used for off-road driving. Once you've done that, you have to go into low range. You tap this button in the center of the interior for low range, but it doesn't let you go into low range until you've shifted into neutral and confirmed that you really want low range. From there, you select this button, the tank turn button, the G-turn button, as you can see, and even then, you're not done. To actually do the turn, you hold down the right shift paddle, you press the accelerator with your foot, and you have to keep the steering wheel firmly straight. If you move it even at all, the tank turn stops immediately, and I had that happen a lot. In fact, just to get the footage of the thing going around in circles, I probably had 15 or 20 false starts where I didn't meet every single one of their parameters absolutely perfectly. And once you turn the steering wheel just a little bit, it stops the tank turn and puts you in park. So if you want to start again, you got to go back into drive, put the steering wheel dead straight, pull the paddle, press the tank turn button, press the accelerator, and hope for the best. And again, if the wheel is just a little off, it stops you again, and you got to go through the whole procedure. And remember, this can only really happen on a loose gravel surface like the one where I'm doing it. You can't just start doing tank turns on the pavement. You'll screw things up. And there are other drawbacks, like the fact that it gets unbelievably dusty, since you're essentially just pushing dust at a high speed in the very area where you're turning. And also, it basically destroys the ground where you're doing it. Don't do this anywhere you care about, because it creates these giant marks in the ground, basically a circle digging into the rock below whatever surface you're on. However, even though there are some problems and it's hard to access, the G-turn has got to be one of the very coolest things in any modern vehicle, and it is so insane to sit in that car when it's spinning around. But anyway, since we've covered the quirkiest quirk of the G580 with EQ technology, let's talk basics, starting with G580. In this case, 580 stands for horsepower, 580 horses, which is the same as the Mercedes-AMG G63. Now, this is not an AMG model. It's just a regular non-performance G-Class, but it has AMG power and more torque. This has 860 pound-feet of torque compared to around 640 in the G63. So, more power and torque than the AMG model. Isn't this a high-performance G-Wagen? Not quite, because the electric motor and the batteries weigh this thing down to about 6,900 pounds, which is roughly 1,100 pounds more than the G63, which itself is not exactly a sprightly, lightweight vehicle. The result is this does 0 to 60 in the 4.5 second range, while the G63 is quicker in the high 3s. This is still very fast, but it's no AMG despite the big power. Now, the EPA says this will get about 240 miles of range between charges, and under here in front, as you can see, well, it's all covered up. You don't get a front trunk in your G580. That's where they put the EQ technology. Now, as for pricing, right now the electric G-Wagen is only offered as the Edition 1 model, sort of a special first edition version with some distinctive cosmetics and trim. That's this, and it starts right around $170,000. That puts it right in the middle of the regular G550, which starts around $150,000, and the high-performance AMG G63, which starts around $190,000. But Mercedes hasn't yet announced what the regular non-Edition 1 G580 will cost when it goes on sale later. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk differences on the outside between the new electric G-Wagen and the regular gas-powered models. To me, the very biggest difference is right here. Instead of a spare tire mounted on the back, you get a little squarish backpack that takes the place of the spare tire. I guess Mercedes-Benz felt they didn't need to add any more weight to this thing by sticking a giant spare tire back here, so you have a backpack instead. It's kind of an interesting situation. This locks with the car. So if you lock the doors, the backpack is locked too. But if you unlock the car, you can open up the backpack by tapping on this little rubber button here, and then it pops open, and you have a little storage compartment back here. You can see the charging cables are here right now, and there's a little net on the inside of the opening part that can also be used to store stuff. And if you look closely, also inside here, you will see an image of the G-Wagen climbing something, just to remind you of how tough and special it is. So a little extra cargo space back here, but you do lose the spare tire. But beyond the backpack, there are some other changes on the outside as well. For one, in back, you can see it's badged as G580. The regular one, of course, G550, and then there's the AMG G63, so that's a giveaway. Thankfully, they didn't put with EQ technology under the G580 badge. But on the side, you do have a small EQ oval here on the front fender, another giveaway that you're looking at the electric one. And you also have blue coloring integrated into the trim going down the side of the car, which is another giveaway that this is the electric one. The standard model doesn't have that. Another interesting change for the electric G-Wagen is this little slot in the fender right here. The regular G550, the AMG G63, they don't have the slot. So if you're looking at the fender slot, you're probably looking at the electric G-Wagen. The other big giveaway that this is the electric one is up front, where you have the grille. Instead of slats going across, you have a basically upright and flat grille with only a few small openings. Obviously, they do this for aerodynamics. They don't need holes in the grille for engine cooling since there's no engine. So that's a distinctive look up front for the electric G-Wagen. As for underneath, Mercedes-Benz says they've also made an important change under here. They've added extra underbody protection because the battery is under the car. And so if you're doing real serious off-roading, you don't want to damage the battery on some sort of rock situation. So the underbody protection is there to keep it safe. Other than that, it's a fairly subtle take on the G-Wagen. Even though it's electric, a totally new propulsion system, they didn't really change it. It would make sense because this is the look, the style, the design that people absolutely love. Mercedes-Benz wanted to integrate electric motors, an EV, into this car, but not change it too much since it is so beloved how it is. And frankly, they've done exactly that. Now, with that said, there is one other noticeable change to the electric G-Wagen. When you get in and start it up, it rumbles. The outside of the car rumbles. It has speakers somewhere on the outside that emit a sound sort of similar to what you'd have in a gas-powered car idling. Take a listen to the G-rumble. And next up, we move inside the G580 with EQ technology. And inside, it's fairly similar to a normal G-Wagen, just like it is on the outside. But also like on the outside, there are a few distinct differences that you'd only notice if you're a seasoned G-Wagen veteran. The biggest is probably the blue trim. You can see stitching on the dashboard is all blue, and it's the same deal on the seats. You get blue stitching on the sides of the seats going all the way up the bottom and the back. So you get blue stitching over on the door panel. This is all to emphasize the eco-friendliness, the blue instead of like a high-performance red. You also have a little blue trim kind of mixed into the carbon fiber weave on the carbon trim. It's a little bit difficult to see, but I promise you, just looking at it, it's there. A little bit of blue added to the blackish grays of the carbon fiber to emphasize the eco-ness. Now, the other big change for the electric G on the inside is the buttons in the center. In the center console here, in the regular G-Wagen, you have your triple locking differential buttons here, but this vehicle doesn't have a gas engine, differentials, it has motors at each wheel. It's a totally different setup, so these buttons change. And I showed you earlier, one of them is the tank turn, one of them is the low range, and the other is something that they call G-steering, which basically allows the G-Wagen to make a tight pivot turn on a trail. So if you're on a tight switchback, for example, it can sort of pivot in place. It's not as cool or flashy as the tank turn, the G turn, but it's probably more legitimately useful on a trail, and that's the button that goes there, replacing the third locking diff. Now, the other change for the electric G-Wagen, not a huge one, but you have shift paddles on the steering wheel, as you can see, but this vehicle has no transmission, so the shift paddles don't change gear. Instead, they change regen. As you press plus or minus on the shift paddles, it changes how much regen and energy recuperation the vehicle will do. So you can change from like the strongest recuperation where you let off the pedal and it slows down very quickly, or you can turn recuperation off completely and the car will just sort of continue gliding forward when you get off the accelerator, and you change that using the shifters. Now, beyond the electricness of this particular G-Wagen, this G is also a big deal because it's a 2025 model, and the entire G-Wagen lineup has been refreshed for the 25 model year with some changes, additions, revisions, but the most important is the addition of some new technology, and specifically adaptive cruise control and auto steering, sort of a lane assist system that'll help you steer and keep in the lane on freeways, especially freeway curves. That is a hugely important addition to the G-Wagen. Despite this thing's massive price tag, it has not had those features before, but finally, for the 25 model year, it joins modernity and gets auto steering and adaptive cruise control. That's a huge technology boost for the G-Wagen that really does finally get it sort of on a level where it probably should have been for at least the last 5 years. This new 25G also finally gets keyless go, which is Mercedes' proximity key system, meaning you can get into the car without having to press the unlock button on the key fob. Instead, you walk right up to the door, you put your thumb on the little opener button, which by the way now says G directly on the button. On all 4 doors it says G to celebrate the G-Wagen. You put your thumb on that, the door automatically unlocks, and then you can push that little button, pull the door open, and get inside. finally a keyless go system for the G-Wagen, another feature that's been sorely lacking for years. The G-Wagen also gets a new camera system for the 25 model year, all Gs, not just the electric one. You can see it here. It shows what's underneath the G-Wagen, and as you drive forward, it continues to show what's under there, which makes off-roading easier. Some other brands have had this system for a while, but it's now finally in the G to aid in off-roading, and it can even record. You see there's a record button here, and you can press it and then record with all the cameras so you can show off your off-roading exploits. Another cool feature, the new technology in the G-Wagen, is in this particular model, the electric version, there is an EQ screen, and it can show you your current state of charge, how it's all working, the whole electric system, which is always pretty cool to see, the energy flow. But I especially like this tab, which shows exactly what features you're using and how much range they're taking from you at any given moment. And if you want to just maximize range completely, you press the little button in the middle and it shuts off all the ancillary features you're using for your comfort in order to get into the optimal top range driving mode, which is pretty cool. It's also neat to see exactly how much each thing is robbing you of range. Now, with all of those great new features, there is one rather unfortunate disappointment, and that's this. The projected logo that comes out of the door, which literally says G stronger than time. It's absurd. It's totally over the top cringe. It shouldn't be there, but it is. And so I guess you got to take the bad with all of the wonderful good of the new G-Wagen. You just kind of got to put your hand under wherever that is and cover it up before you unlock the door and open it if there are people around. And next up, we move on to the back of the electric G-Wagen, and nothing has really changed back here for the electric model compared to the standard one, but one big change for the 25 model year is the addition of these available rear screens. As you can see, they're rather large and a bit in your face back here, but they are full infotainment system. So it's not just like a screen you only want to use occasionally to watch a movie. You can follow along with the vehicle's trip computers, see how fast you're going, how miles are being added. You can check the EQ screen and see the current usage of all of the electric technology, or you can go into navigation and put in a navigation destination from the back seat. You can make a call from back here on a Bluetooth phone. You can change the radio. Everything that you can do from up front in the infotainment system, you can do from back here on these rather large screens. Now in back, you also have power ports, USB-C, dual as you can see, and HDMI ports back here. So if you do want to watch something on these screens, you have that option as well. So being a rear passenger is pretty nice, except for the fact that it's a little tight back here, to be totally honest. The G-Wagen, as sort of big as it looks, is actually not that big of a vehicle. And you do have space for knees, legs, head, etc., but not an excessive amount of space given this vehicle's size, especially knee room a bit pushing into the driver's seat. If you want really big, there's always the GLS, larger vehicles, but the G has acceptable room in back. And remember, this is only a two-row vehicle, no third-row seating available, even for the updated 25 G-Wagen. And finally, we move on to the cargo area in the new G-Wagen. You open up the tailgate door. You can see the cargo area back here, and there's not really all that much to discuss, although Mercedes-Benz says it is a slightly smaller cargo area in the electric model compared to the standard version. They say the electric model uses about 3 cubic feet of cargo space due to batteries and EV technology, although frankly, that's basically nothing. With the seats folded down, these have about 70 cubic feet, so losing 3 is really not a big deal. Frankly, I don't even really see where the 3 cubic feet went away. It just looks like a standard G-Wagen cargo area to me, which is fairly large and fairly sizable. A few interesting things back here. You got a little power port where you can plug in your devices if you wish. You also have a nice cargo cover, as you can see. And one nice benefit of the electric G-Wagen compared to the standard model, because the spare tire is no longer on the tailgate, you don't have a very heavy tailgate. It's actually pretty easy to close compared to the regular G, where you sometimes have to heave it, especially if you're on a hill, because that tire is so heavy. No longer. You can close it pretty easily. But aside from all that, the real story to take home about the electric G-Wagen is it's just a G-Wagen, but electric. They haven't made any radical, crazy changes. They wanted to keep the same G everybody knows and loves, but electrify it. And let's see if they also kept the driving experience. All right, driving the G580 with EQ technology. The single worst named new car. Mercedes didn't want to call it the EQG because they have so much brand value in the G-Wagen, so they didn't want to put something in front of it. They didn't want to call it the G580E because that would undersell it. And so in true German fashion, with precision of language and no thought paid to marketing value or idiocy or simplicity, they had to just get it right. And so G580 with EQ technology, which literally no one will call it except to make fun of it. But the good news is the name is basically the worst part of this whole car. I gotta say, I am really, really impressed with this G because there's just so many great things about it. So let's talk driving experience. It drives like a G-Wagen. Like, if you didn't know that you were in an electric car, and then obviously the electric motors, it doesn't make noise, etc. But other than that, you're not giving up anything. Like it's tall, it's boxy, it's upright, just like a G-Wagen. It has the same solid feel as a G-Wagen. It has the same on-road kind of planted solidity. You're not giving up anything for a conversion to electric, which is a pretty impressive thing. Then you have the performance. 580 horsepower is obviously a massively strong number, and it really does do a great job at that. 0 to 60 time is technically slower than the G63 because it's so much heavier, but because the power comes on instantly, since it's an EV, it actually feels, at least for the first instant of acceleration, just as fast as a G63, if not faster. It ends up losing out as you keep going, but by then, you've already blasted off past whatever you're trying to get by, and you're moving along down the road. A lot of people who own G-Wagons, Hollywood celebrities and corporate executives, whatever, they would love to have an environmentally friendly car, but they want the look or the feel of a G-Wagen. And in some cases, those people have left Mercedes. They've chosen the environmentally friendly thing over the G-Wagen thing. And some cases they haven't, but they regret it. They would rather have an environmentally friendly car. Well, guess what? This gives you the option to do both. There's no compromise here. You have a fully electric car, but you still have everything that's great about the G-Wagen. The same great look, the same on-road sturdiness, the same feel, and since it's a 25 model, it's updated with a lot of great new technology that is dramatically better than before, like auto lane centering and better adaptive cruise control. It's just a really impressive overall vehicle now, compared to how it was. Sure, you give up a little bit of cargo volume and that rear spare tire backpack thing looks a little weird, but it's an amazing opportunity to have it all in one vehicle. And to not pay absurd amounts of money for it. I have a suspicion that the early ones, they could get $250,000, $300,000 all day long from very eager buyers who kind of want to combine these worlds. But I just think this is one of the coolest, one of the best overall does-it-all kind of vehicles on the market. And I think it's going to have a really positive impact for people who want a G-Wagen and just don't want to have the ridiculous 12 mile per gallon disaster of a vehicle situation that the G-Wagen is. Now you can do it and still be perceived as environmentally responsible and not just sort of a Hollywood jerk at this ridiculous vehicle. And I gotta say, as a G-Wagen owner, as a Hollywood jerk in this ridiculous vehicle, this is quite an appealing car. I sit here and I look at this and I drive this and I'm thinking, you're not really giving up anything. A lot of EVs have sort of weird styling or they make weird compromises. They have this weird aerodynamic design that not everybody loves. Not this. This is the G that you know and love and are into, but it just so happens to be fully electric, which gives you a whole new kind of dimension to enjoy a G-Wagen ownership experience. I'm impressed. I'm truly and legitimately impressed. It drives well. It really does bring like a new dimension of excellence to the G. And so that's the new 2025 Mercedes-Benz G580 with EQ technology. Really, the name is the worst thing about it. Everything else is fantastic. It gives you everything you love about the G-Wagen, but in a fully electric package. So Hollywood celebrities no longer have to feel guilty about driving their G-Wagons and getting 12 miles per gallon. Really though, it is a fantastic SUV, a combination of old and new, and I'm thrilled I had the chance to check it out. And now it's time to give the G580 a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 70 out of 100, which puts the electric G-Wagen here against important rivals. Folks, I'll put this simply, this thing is awesome. It combines G-Wagen styling, which everyone loves, and G-Wagen driving experience, which everyone loves, with EV efficiency and performance, plus it can do a tank turn. This isn't as practical as a Rivian R1S, and it's a lot more expensive than a Hummer EV, but there's a lot to love here, and I think the G580 is going to be a big hit with everyone who wanted a G-Wagen but didn't want to look like a planet-killing monster.